Hey y'all, happy Tuesday. I don't know why I got a little stuck there just then. But anyway, hey y'all, happy Tuesday. Hopefully everyone is doing well. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a moment here. Before we do, I would definitely like to thank my patrons for supporting my content. And if you haven't been here lately, as you can see, helping me upgrade this beautiful background. It's going to get even better as we go on with time. And even my co-host, because this is like my co-host for tonight, this is his lane with the sound and the background and all that stuff. So he's going to be helping me, improve my sound even more over time. But thank you to my patrons, to everybody that supports my content. If you purchase merch, thank you so much. If you would like to purchase merch, the link is below in my bio. Hello to everyone coming in the room. Hey, King DJ. As y'all come in the room, make sure that you let me know that you are here. We're going to talk about a couple of different things tonight. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up and share. We're going to go ahead and bring in my co-host for tonight and let him introduce himself.
What's going on, everyone? My name is CJ, aka Hayes. I'm a podcaster, filmmaker. I do a lot of stuff, so I'm glad to be here, though.
You do a lot of stuff. So go ahead and tell them where they can find you and stuff like that before we get started.
Yeah, if you want to follow me personally, my social media everywhere is at CEO Hayes. That's CEOHAIZE. My podcast is called The Awakened Soul. The social media handles for that is at Awakened Soul Pod. And then you can find the video version of the podcast right here on YouTube at The Awakened Soul Podcast.
So it's kind of cool that you agreed to come on tonight, because we kind of started around the same time. You went like the podcasting direction mainly, and I did the YouTube thing, and now I'm gonna try to start like moving in your turf just a little bit, but I'm gonna have to get all the tips from you because I don't know nothing about the podcasting world. But yeah, so it's been a couple years, and I don't know, this is like cool and like full circle. You were like one of the first people that was like supporting me, like bringing me on your podcast, like all those things. So I really appreciate you.
Anytime, yeah, it's wild how far we've both gone since then. But I remember somebody offered to turn your videos into podcasts for you for free back when you first started. I wonder where that red bearded guy is at right now, because he was kind of trying to tell you, but it is what it is.
Sometimes we be hard headed and we just want to do stuff in our own time or whatever.
Yeah, you got to do it when you're ready for it, right?
Right. But all right, let's go ahead and jump into tonight. So the first thing I want to talk about, I want to mention this whole Joe Rogan thing. Because some changes and updates have been made. And I don't think that I've really hit on this topic the last 2 weeks because we've been talking about some other things here. But we are going to talk about it tonight. Hello to everybody coming in the room. Hey, Doug. Hey, India. Hey, Edward Ivy. All right. So let's, first of all, I'm going to read this article over here at, I think this is NBC. So this is Neil Young urges Spotify workers to quit as Trump tells Joe Rogan to stop apologizing. Neil Young urged Spotify employees to quit their jobs in a new attack on the company over his decision to continue giving the polarizing podcaster Joe Rogan a platform. In a statement published on his official website, Young 76 said he hopes Spotify workers would get out of the place before it eats up your soul. Spotify continues to face scrutiny over its support for Rogan despite his past comments spreading misinformation around the COVID-19 vaccines and his use of racist slurs on his show. Young, who made headlines last month when he demanded that Spotify remove his music over Rogan's podcast comments, told workers that the big problem with the streaming service was really its CEO. Ick pulls the strings. Get out of that place before it eats up your soul. So this just goes on to talk about that. If you don't know, the CEO of Spotify just basically came out and said, hey, I don't think that I don't think that canceling or getting rid of Joe Rogan is the right step. And it's just been a lot. This has been kind of like a controversy the last 2 weeks, and I'm sure most of you watching know what's going on, but the N Word tape came out with Joe Rogan saying the N Word for about 24 times. This was a compilation put together by, I think, like a media company. And these N words go back to about 2011 ish. This was not done during his time on Spotify. So, what do you think about that?
So it's a lot to unpack with this. First with Joe Rogan, it's a lot. I think some of it's shock jock type thing. Some of it is him just not being as aware of some of the things that he does. But with the whole like exodus of artists from Spotify, first of all, as much as I love NDRE, it's a lot of artists right now, or a handful of artists that don't move the needle. Nobody is checking for these artists who are leaving right now, so I don't think it's going to get necessarily the attention that it does. It's going to take somebody like a Kendrick to say my next album is not going to be on Spotify because of Joe Rogan for it to really get the type of notice that Neil Young thought he was going to get.
And
but
for the non hip hop heads, he's talking about Kendrick Lamar.
Yeah. But I really like, does something need to be brought up to that, the fact that he's saying it this much? Yeah, absolutely. I would say that, hopefully it's a wake-up call for him. He came out with a whack-ass apology so far, but I understand some of the backlash, but I think like the whole leaving Spotify thing is going to take a way bigger name for it to really hurt anybody's pockets, in my opinion.
That's a good point. So Joe Rogan has about 11 million listeners per episode. He is the biggest standing podcast, like I think literally in the world right now. And like I said, those things happened before he was on Spotify. And I don't even know if you know this, but NDRE literally just came out. I don't know if this was yesterday or today. I was like, well, he apologized. I'm cool with it. We all good now. Well, I mean, that's basically, what she said. Now, I don't know if somebody called her up. I don't know if somebody pulled her coattail. I don't know if she's genuine in that, she wants to forgive him for this. Or I don't know if she realized like people not really just checking for you. You're not competing with 11 million people per episode. And this is probably the most publicity. Not only is this probably the most publicity that NDRE has gotten in a very long time, right? But like the fact that I don't particularly remember NDRE being very super outspoken about anything in the past. Not saying that she hasn't been, but I haven't seen it. It hasn't been to an extent that's made any waves. This is probably the most viral she's been since I Am Not My Hair.
You hit the nail on the head there. That's a fact.
So I also think it's interesting that, they keep throwing this misinformation word around. To me, Joe Rogan appears to be pretty open, pretty nuanced, pretty objective. A lot of people saying misinformation. I believe if some of these bigger names were open to going on his show, he would be totally open to having them there. Also, what I get tired of and what I get really annoyed of is like race is like that final, like they don't even know I'm about to cut them with this spade right now. You ever played spades? Y'all played there? Were you in Arizona or somewhere like that?
Who, me?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Oh, no. Well, right now I'm in Columbus, Ohio, but I grew up all over the place. But of course I've played spades.
Okay, so, well, I didn't want to. Yeah. But you'll be waiting and you'll be playing and they thinking they doing something. And you come around and this spade fly across the table like they didn't even see it coming. People have started to use race like that. It's like when they can't get you, they can't get you. It's like, what's this last little thing? And so it's because it started with Neil Young. And let me say for the record, I don't even know Neil Young. I don't know his music. I assume that's a little bit before my time. I know you're like a music buff, so you're probably like more familiar.
A little bit, still not much. So
okay. But it started with Neil Young and the whole misinformation thing. Like, you know, I don't want to be on a platform that is having somebody doing this misinformation. And then when that wasn't getting enough steam, it's like, hit them with the N word tapes.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's like, I'm not gonna sit here and make excuses for Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is not a dumb person. You know what I mean? I don't think he was. I don't think he is now. I don't think he was in 2011. However, this concern or this fake concern was not there until they were ready to use it as a last ditch attack to silence this man. And I feel like if we're going to have a conversation about the N word and all of a sudden people don't care about the context, and we need to have that same energy for when Joe Biden used the word, for when Howard Stern used the word, for when the Young Turks used the word, for when Jimmy Dore used the word, for when Kyle Kalinske used the words, okay? All of these people are very popular, have YouTube channels. One of them is currently in the White House. You know what I mean? And that's another thing. NDRE and Neil Young weren't like, we gonna take our stuff off YouTube. It was just Spotify. Why?
I mean, they use it because of the money that Spotify pays Joe Rogan directly versus how the artists are paid. And I understand there's a discrepancy there, but that was already there. If that was your issue when Joe Rogan signed his contract for Spotify, artists should have raised the issue of how they were paid then, not wait until it starts with misinformation. And then, like you said, the race card being used as a trump card when you can't get anything else. And this is my issue. And I catch backlash from this from other Black people all the time, is that this does not mean that we can't speak out on racial issues, but Black people have their own inherent inner racism that they don't want to deal with at all, in the form of colorism and other things. Don't even get me started on how Black people like to treat mixed race people, but that's a story for another day. But my thing is, like, focus on the issue, right? When you continue to move the goalposts, what people don't understand is that takes away from your original message. If the misinformation piece was the biggest piece and the most important part of it, you didn't like these tapes have been around, like you said, since 2011 of Joe Rogan saying the N word. Don't now want to raise concern about it like it wasn't always there. And that's why we say cancel culture is not effective. You can't cancel somebody who doesn't give a damn, period. But yeah, it's a lot of just craziness that this all turned into.
Well, they're suggesting that he may lose about 19% of his, listeners. Now, I'm not a mathematician by any means. However, 11 million per episode. I mean, Spotify would still lose a significant amount of supporters and fans and subscribers, you know what I mean, if they were to lose that platform. And then another thing about these really, really huge personalities like the Nicki Minaj's, the Kanye West, the Joe Rogans, these people that have a very solidified following, they'll leave you before they'll leave their person.
That is for sure.
Like at some point, I think some of these people just, like, at some point you just can't cancel them. I think the whole, so have you been getting, because the mixed race comment, you threw me for a loop, and
if you don't want to get off on it, we don't have to. I know I kind of threw that out there, but yeah, that's something that I've been noticing a lot more lately, and it's like, I don't know, it's a long story, but I'm sorry I cut you off. What were you about to say?
Okay, so let me can I give my listeners a little background so they know why you're saying that? Or
for sure, absolutely.
Okay, so Hayes is a mixed race, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay,
my dad's white.
Okay, so there's been a very, and like, honestly, I mean, sometimes I forget unless you like post pictures of your family and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I'm just not thinking of you in context of your parents. You know what I mean? I'm just thinking of you as you and who I've, gotten to know over like social media, listen to your podcast and stuff like that. How now I'm interested to know, how is it feeling to have to conceptualize some of these issues and feeling like you're trying to be tugged into like one box or other? Or is that happening? Because that kind of seems what you alluded to.
Well, for me, I don't think it happens to me as probably as much as you think, just because when you look at me, I'm black, right? So nobody really thinks mixed race. So I don't really run into that a lot. But like with me being very active in my culture and very active in social things and stuff like that, the conversation does come up. And then it's funny that there's a lot of times where I get into debates with people about the whole mixed race people aren't black and the difference between nationality and race and all that stuff. And then people don't know that my dad's white. And then when I bring it up after the fact, because like literally, just to tell a story to bring it all home, is that there's this guy who supported my podcast who literally was like, this dude Hayes, what he's doing, this is exemplary of black culture. Black is beautiful. Look at what he's doing. It's so amazing to see a black brother doing what he's doing, XYZ. And one day he posted something about mixed race children being ugly. And I was like, hold on, bro. Like, I'm mixed, right? And he literally didn't respond, unfollowed me on everything. Like, it was weird. And it's like, all right, see, this is the type of thing that is an issue to me, because you see the work that I'm doing for our culture. You supported the work that I'm doing for our culture. And then the moment that you find out, and it's not like I hide it, I post my dad all the time, so I'm never hiding. I'm very proud of the culture that I come from and my Irish ancestry as well. And so it's like that inherent things that we can't even figure out within our culture, and then we want to call people out outside of it. It's like, fix home first, and then worry about what other people are doing.
Honestly, I have questions where this really could take like a whole different turn of what we were supposed to talk about tonight. So okay, so now, because I wasn't really gonna go into this, but how do you feel about Joe Rogan, using the N word? Do you feel differently about it, or have you ever been in a position where somebody, that was not black used it towards you? And do you feel like that, not towards you, maybe around you, and that could impact how you see these type of issues?
So I think it's important to point out that the fact that my view on it is a lot different, because I did grow up mainly in Europe and Italy and Germany, military brat. So I grew up overseas a lot, where it's more about national pride than individual race. So like my first whole like dealing with like racial things where we moved back stateside when I was 16. And I remember, just like I kind of said, like nobody really knew that my dad was white. He came to pick me up from school, and like literally the whole class was like, wait a second, your dad's white? And I'm like, yeah. And so that was my real, like, because growing up in the military, interracial couples in the military are very common. So when you live on a military base, you kind of, it's more common than what it was back then. But as far as like the Joe Rogan thing and people using the N word, I've honestly never ran into it where anybody's called me that or said it around me in a derogatory manner. Yeah. I have run into situations where people do use it, whether it's like talking about a song or repeating what somebody says or something like in that frame, but never like where it was used as an attack. I've never in face-to-face live have ever dealt with that. So
okay. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. We're gonna keep moving on, because maybe one day I'll just have you back on for an actual interview, because you got my gears going now. And and like I told you, I totally forgot. Like, I don't think anything about that. And I think maybe like you'll post a picture of your dad on like Father's Day or something, and I'll be like, oh, and keep scrolling.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, but yeah. Anyway, so with that said, with the Joe Rogan, uh after all this is being said and done about Joe Rogan, now you slowly have people lifting the mask mandates or lifting, I don't really want to say vaccine mandates, mostly mask mandates. So before we talk about that, right, I want to talk about some of the hypocrisy that we've seen. Particularly recently, we saw with Stacey Abrams and what's the other guy? Stacey Abrams, the governor. What's his name?
Gavin Newsome.
Yeah. So Gavin Newsome, right? I don't know if these particular people have said anything about Joe Rogan, but I know that whether it's been, the Obamas, whether it's been Lori Lightfoot, this is Gavin Newsom's second time, doing this. You have Stacey Abrams, who we're going to talk about tonight. You have AOC that went down to Florida and was frolicking around in the sun without her mask, leaving all of her constituents in New York. We've seen a very almost like hypocrisy, I think. Well, we're going to talk about it and I'll let you give my thoughts on a lot of ends. I think it's hypocrisy. Some people, as we're going to see tonight, are going to say, oh, well, the science is changing, or they're going to give some type of excuse for why, they're better than you or I, or the children in the schools and things like that. But let's start out with this story from SACB. So I was very judicious. Gavin Newsome admits briefly removing masks for a photo during NFL game. So as you can see here, this is Gavin Newsome, the governor of California, along with Magic Johnson. He acknowledged he briefly posed maskless for a picture during Sunday's NFC Championship football game. I was very judicious yesterday, very judicious. And you'll see in the photo that I did take, where Magic was generous enough to ask me for a photograph, and in my left hand, the mask, and I took a photo. The rest of the time I wore it as we all should. Not when I had a glass of water or a thing, and I encourage everybody else to do so, and that's it. So this shows a picture here. Now, Mayor Garcetti, who was at that same game, the mayor of LA, his actual quote was, I wore my mask the entire game, and when people ask for a photograph, I hold my breath. Okay. That's what Mayor Garcetti says. And then we have Stacey Abrams. This is over at thehill.com. Stacey Abrams is caught in a deepening storm after being photographed maskless amid a group of masked school children. Abrams, a Democratic icon and voting rights activist who is making her second bid to become governor of Georgia, retweeted and then deleted a tweet that showed her visit to an elementary school in Decatur, Georgia. The deletion did nothing to quell the role, which has become a talking point beyond the limited confines of the political world. Even Joy Behar and Anna Navarra came out saying, this was a stupid thing to do. She shouldn't have done it. She slipped up. As you can see here, here's a picture with her smiling, just able to just show her beautiful smile to the world, while you have these tons of children around her that are masked. Okay. So what do you think about this? Do you think that, because both of these stories went viral, people are calling it hypocrisy. Do you think that people are overreacting? Do you think, hey, well, he just took his picture off for, he just took his mask off for a picture. She just took her mask off for a picture or to drink a sip of water. Yet they have been very adamant about telling their citizens, telling the students that you have to continue to mask.
I think in some of the cases it is like somebody takes off a mask to take a picture, and those are to me they're excusable. But when you have someone like in Stacy Abrams' case, she's in a state where masks in schools are part of a mandate, and as much as it was that one picture, then further pictures came out to show her just amongst the school without a mask in several different cases. That's when it's like, okay, all right, now and she's trying to use the thing of it's just the right trying to embellish or whatever. It's like, no, at this point, you have to live by what you talk about. And while she hasn't spoken out on if she agrees with mask mandates in schools, and I know they're being lifted in a lot of states as well, like you were in a state where that is the law. You are supposed to have a mask within a school. And once it was a bunch of pictures that came out, it's like, all right, now you got your hand caught in the cookie jar. So the excuses aren't going to last on this one for me personally. Like I said, some of the other people that like for one picture or whatever, all right, that's fine. But when it's proven that it was more than that, that's when it becomes an issue, and you really have to deal with whatever comes your way at that point.
Let me read her exact statement. This is what she said. This is from her Instagram. She said, "It is shameful that our opponents are using a Black History Month reading event for Georgia children as the impetus for a false political attack, and it is pitiful and predictable that our opponents continue to look for opportunities to distract from their failed records when it comes to protecting public health during the pandemic. One of Stacy's opponents downplayed the virus while trading stock to profit off the pandemic after his private coronavirus briefing as a senator. Another of her opponents attacked mayors seeking to protect their citizens and has failed to expand access to Medicaid even as rural hospitals close. This pathetic, transparent, and silly attack is beneath anyone who claims he wants to lead Georgia." Now, what I will say about that is that for me, I have a hard time respecting people that cannot own up to what they did. In this regard, right, as we read Gavin Newsome's statement versus Stacey Abrams, that is so pathetic when you have these supposed leaders, right? You have these people in political position that are not just able to say, you know what, I messed up, or you know what, I know how that could look, or like she just played this all the way to the left, like, oh, they're just this is a political attack, when everyone, all of these politicians have been guilty of making COVID political, unfortunately, right? But the fact that she just completely, like, you aren't showing any responsibility to the people that voted for you and an actual answer of why you think this is okay. And to me, it's shocking, and I think beneath her. You know what I mean? I think it's beneath her, and Nancy Pelosi, there was somebody I forgot to name earlier. You remember she got caught in the hair salon,
yeah,
right, without her mask. And so a lot of them have done this. AOC, this is very similar to AOC, Republicans just want to date me. Now, I love women. I support women. I want the best for women. However, when I'm comparing the men to the women, at least the ones we're naming here tonight, it's looking like the women are trying to skirt around, their responsibility to be honest with the people that voted for them and just trying to push it off as like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. When you have people like, well, no, I think if I remember correctly, and y'all let me know in the chat, I think Nancy Pelosi handled it straight. I think she was just like, yeah, it's not something I should have done. I just really wasn't thinking about it. I was in a moment. I trust my, beautician type energy.
I don't remember. I remember the Pelosi situation. I don't remember how she handled it initially. So I can't speak to that. But I will say I do agree with you. Like the thing is that once you're a politician, you're in a position of leadership. You have to lead either by example, or if you mess up, just say, "Hey, I messed up." But this distraction, the hide the hands tactic of, "Oh, this is just the people who don't like me politically trying to make it a bigger deal than what it is." It's like no, it's not that. Not when there's like 10 pictures of you floating around the school without a mask. That's not just somebody. If you don't give them the ammunition, then there'll be nothing there for them to use. So that's where I sit.
This what I will say about the mask thing, right? It's like, pick a position and stand on it. I'm not trying to like give myself a pat on the back as this just perfect person, but something I will give myself credit for is that I've been pretty consistent throughout, the since the beginning of COVID. The first 2 weeks, I was like, all right, I'm in the house. After 2 weeks, I'm like, this is starting to look suspicious. I haven't seen anybody falling out and convulsing like the people that were over there in China on those videos they were showing us, if y'all remember that. After that, I'm like, this is, getting suspicious. People wanted me to stay in the house and miss an entire year of my life. I was like, nah, I'm healthy, I'm good, I'm free, like I'm out. I was racking up flyer frequent miles and all that type of thing. They was just come on to first class because the planes were so empty, And so I've always had concerns, and based on things that I've read, studies that I've read, not even just relegated to just inside the United States. But these bandanas and these paper cloths that we were putting over our faces, just grabbing after the person at the front of the Apple store handed it to us, you know what I mean, or Walmart, people not really washing their masks, not disposing of them correctly. Certainly not like this is the most tragic, virus of mankind that we've ever seen in history. So I've been pretty adamant about, I just don't think they work. I just don't. And so in many cases, I've just opted not to wear one. But I've been willing to not only stand on that, take the consequences that come with that, but you're not gonna catch me like trying to like wiggle myself into doing it both ways or pretending or saying something different when I'm not on camera. Like that's been my entire position. And if these politicians would just be real and be genuine, you wouldn't have to hide or be someone else in front of the camera or behind the camera.
That's a fact. And I think too, it's important to say like, it's okay to change your position as new information comes alight, but then say, hey, because of this new breakthrough or whatever, my position is now changed. Be in front of it. But when you do the thing of you want to maintain your original position, but your actions don't back that up, then that's where the questions arise from. It's nothing wrong with saying, hey, and they're talking about moving COVID from being a pandemic to an endemic, meaning that it's something that's going to be around forever from now on. As that information comes along, you say, hey, now I feel comfortable not wearing my mask because of this, and we've learned to live with it. All right, fine. Let that be your statement, but you can't try to live in two worlds. And that's what we see a lot of politicians do. They want so badly to hold on to what their original position was when they could really just say, hey, listen, there's new information. We good now. Something like that. So
do you think they do that because they feel like the people that voted for them would change on them? Like, why do you think the culture, the current polarization of every freaking thing, everything's political, you know what I mean? Do you think that's what's made it so hard, like the climate for people to just be like, I changed my mind, like I'm not with that anymore?
I think so. We live in a culture where just saying you changed your mind is starting to become like they use it to call you a hypocrite at that point when it's perfectly fine. And I do think the fear of that, and especially when you have these people who want to go on political runs, who need their supporters and things like that, they so badly don't want that to be levied towards them that they then just double down on things even after there's been so much information to come out and change it, and then they really just get caught up in the long run. When you serve rhetoric rather than the truth, it always comes back to bite you in your ass at some point. And that's what we're seeing happening with politicians now.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. I like that. And I think it's very unfortunate, man. It's very unfortunate because what happens is if you don't have the ability, whether it's fear, whether it's just you being disingenuous, whether you're just an outright liar, right? If you don't have that ability to be truthful, to be objective, to change your opinion, how can we trust you as citizens?
Facts.
How? If
That's 100%
information changes, if science changes, how can we trust that you will work in our best interest and be like, all right, y'all, this changed, and now I need to come back to the table and tell you the truth. This is where we are now. It's like, it's scary when you really think about it because, you know, whether we've put them in this box, whether they put themselves in this box, it's like it's made it almost impossible to fully trust that people won't just take this hard line position. And you know, I had Kim on the show, I think this was last week, Naturally Fashionable, who said, I believe most Americans, particularly most Black people, are moderate. You know what I mean? Moderate. And so now, if you have these politicians that are picking these hardline positions and then sometimes aligning with some of the most fringe voices, where does that leave? And I can't speak for you, but like, where does that leave people like me who, you know, it's like, how can we trust you?
Yeah, that's why I don't trust anything. I trust nothing nowadays. Nothing. If it comes from the mainstream media, if it's like I just can't trust it. You got to do your own research. And you know, some people just don't have the time to dig deeper into it like me and you would do. And I understand that, but like I don't trust anything anymore. Nothing. My friend Billy Ray Valentine, who hosts like the Infinite Fringe, he once told me, he was like, once you see the rabbit hole and you go down into it, you'll never come out of it. And that's exactly what happened. I don't trust the damn thing anymore. And it sucks because you're now left in the place where you always have to question what's put in front of you. And because of that, like, that's why you see people hold on to things in these ideas so hard, regardless of what facts are out there, because they're just trying to hold on to some form of feeling like they're getting the truth from somebody. And that's where we see people radicalized.
You know what? I was thinking about this earlier today, right? And I was mostly thinking about as it relates to the Joe Rogan show. Cause I'm like, should I be mad about this? Like, why am I not like mad about this? And not just as it relates to Joe Rogan, right? But I was kind of doing like this looking inward, trying to figure out like, you know, where I was landing and feeling about everything. And I don't know if you feel this too, but I think because I used to always wonder why news anchors could report a story of like a child being brutalized or being, you know, hurt or anything and not really. I mean, they just go on to the next story. And as awful as that sounds, it's like after hearing so much, especially the more like does that matter in the scheme of thing? What Joe Rogan said in 2011? Do I really want people puppeteering my emotions to use this for their capital gain, to use this to boost their platform, to use this to get more fans, to use this to get more people to listen to their music, to the new platform that they want? Like, do I want to give this emotional energy to this? You know what I mean? And so I found that I have to be stingy. I have to be selfish about what I'm giving my emotional capital to, because it's money. It's literally tender. Like, we make these people, we make or break people with our attention. And sometimes for me, it's just not worth it. And I know a lot of times, like, I talk about very, like different stories that some people might find like very serious. Like, even when I'm talking about the COVID thing these days, I'm just like, well, I mean, hey, it is what it is. And it's not to offend people that have lost someone to COVID or anything like that. However, our emotions, we've been lied to, we've been attempted to be manipulated, we've been in some regards shamed, and people will use our humanness, our empathy, our love, our will to do right against us.
And that's part of that rabbit hole. Literally everything you see, whether it's a TV show, whether it's a promotion for some coffee, everything is built, and they have people that literally sit back and think what colors are going to trigger certain synapses in you, and then what visual can we pair with those colors that really engage you. Like that is one of the biggest rabbit hole things you will fall into, and it makes you see everything different. And so, like, that's why I don't trust anything. And one of the things that I try to do on my platform is I always say, here's the facts, or at least what's presented as the facts, and then I separate that from then my interpretation or my feelings on them so that I can be transparent. This mainstream media isn't doing that. They are literally trying to get you to elicit a feeling out of you, so then you're so caught up in either fear, happiness, anger, whatever it is they're trying to get you to feel. They want you to be so wrapped up in that you're just taking in what they're giving you, and it's then attaching itself to an emotional reaction to you, and then you can't do anything about it. It's crazy.
It's so many people over the last few years that have been paralyzed by fear, just outright fear. And people will be mad at you. They will hate you for not agreeing with them, for not living in fear with them. When people were wishing death on me, literally, because I said, I'm not locking myself in the house for a year. Like, I'm not doing it. I support freedom, and I love freedom so much that I am behind you. If you want to lock yourself in a closet with your bum buns for the next 2 years, I'm with it. I'm down for it. I support you. However, me, I'm not doing it. And it angers people, man. It angers people. And so many people have been paralyzed by fear. And fear sparks dis-ease in your body. That's right? There are literally studies that show that you can bring on or ward off disease by your mentality. Like, this is a real thing. I mean, I was reading a study earlier today that said that you've had more women die from I think it's called broken heart syndrome, if I'm not mistaken. You have more women die from that in the last 2 to 3 years than in previous years, right? It is a deep sadness that has taken over this country. And I've said this, as somebody that has been blessed enough to kind of go to some different states over the last year or two. Being in a Florida, being in a Miami feels totally different than being in DC. When I was in DC, I don't know if it feels exactly like that now, like as of today, but felt like it was like a dark cloud. Like, people just felt not happy. And I'm like, turn off your news. My parents told me, my mom told me she literally had to like make my dad stop watching CNN, and she tricked him into watching like reruns of the Jeffersons, right? It was just becoming too much. It was becoming
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah, at the beginning of COVID, I was literally obsessing over the numbers. Every second, I was like just looking at it, and then I finally realized, like, listen, I'm so obsessing over whether, like, how many people have it here and where I live. If there's a chance we're gonna get it, that we were paralyzed in the house for like 3 months, and I was just like, you know what? We're not finna do this, right? We wore our masks and stuff, but we got out walking the dogs, playing catch, doing whatever, especially when they didn't have school and stuff. And it was like, at some point you have to choose to disengage, and it's sad that that's what we live in. You have to kind of disengage from like media and everything, but you kind of have to do that. Protecting your peace, whatever brings you peace, protecting that is at the utmost importance. So I may get crucified for this. If not wearing your mask brings you peace, and you're not in a place that mandates you wear it, just you want to go outside without your mask and breathe in some fresh air, if that's what your peace is, you have every right to do that. You got to protect your peace over everything.
And you know what? This kind of goes back to the Joe Rogan thing. And I think this is a huge reason why CNN is losing so many followers. And you have a Joe Rogan who can have 11 million listeners. That's like per episode, right? It's because it's not this constant fear. Giving you some advice from his own perspective, like this is what I did when I dealt with this, and asking just a very objective questions that without making people that have those questions feel dumb, feel like they're terrorists, right? Feel like they're white supremacists, feel like they are evil or grandma killers.
Yeah.
For wanting answers to some of these hard questions that regular everyday people have without, that they won't answer without being made to feel like they're evil.
If
And that
people if they make you feel like you can't ask a question, if it's wrong for asking a question, to me that just should tell you that the answer is something that they don't want you to have. That's how I feel about it. You shouldn't be afraid to ask a question. You shouldn't be made to feel dumb to ask a question or to be crucified for just saying, hey, I don't understand this. It will help me to better fall in line with whatever you need me to do. If you just answer this question for me and they still don't want to answer it, listen, the way my brain works, I wouldn't be able to take that.
the mainstream media has literally called people who have questioned at any point of this. And I remember one story, it was this really good connection that I made, and I couldn't wait to talk about it, right? This shows you, American news versus global news. I remember early on in COVID, the headlines here were white supremacists just want to get their haircuts. That was a story here. While literally in Africa, and I'm not going to say which country because I don't remember, but it was a country in Africa. It was several countries in Africa at the same time, right? Right over the water. You had countries in Africa that were protesting like, yo, we're more scared of dying from hunger than we are from COVID. Let us work. Let us get back to work.
Yeah.
And they were in the streets stopping trucks that had like food and rice, and like we have to eat, we have to work, we have to be able to provide for ourselves. We are more likely to die from starvation than we are from COVID at this rate, right? And that's when all the scientists here were freaking baffled because they're like, what's going on in Africa? Why aren't those people over there being affected by COVID? So, I mean, that's why I'm not gonna just say I'm super amazing, and like geopolitics and all that kind of stuff, because I'm not, and I'm still learning. But as it relates to COVID, that has been one thing that I've been, I've tried to be adamant about looking at research coming out of other places, and I think that's so important to do. And you also made a really good point earlier. They know that the average citizen doesn't have time to sit there or literally now with like reels and TikToks and everything that else we've had have almost been programmed into shorter attention spans.
Mm-hmm.
The average American, you're working all day, you come home to deal with the kids, this and that. You're going to read that headline and keep moving. Most people aren't doing what you and I do, reading 4 or 5 articles just about one topic. You know what I mean? Just to get an overall general consensus of what's going on with that. And they know that. They know that.
Yeah, they literally the whole system is built off thriving off that, right? Is taking advantage of people's inability to double check facts for themselves. Like people have actual lives to take care of multiple kids, take care of family members, whatever. Sometimes all they have is the 5 minutes to turn on CNN. And a lot of times they're getting misinformation and it sucks.
Yeah, and they know that, right? And then now, we're so big on personality and representation, and they think, hey, we'll just put somebody in front of them that looks like them and can make them feel something, make them feel emotion, connect to them or something, and just tell them what we want you to say this script, and they'll listen, and on some part that's on us. Cheap plug, entertainers are leaders. T-shirts available now at RhondaMary.com. But with this celebrity worship culture and the representation and the relatability and the what else, something politics they call it, is gonna come to me in a second, but it's like, oh, this person looks like me, so they must be telling me the truth, and the whole time they're lying. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And not to say the people that don't look like you are telling the truth either, but that's where, like you said, doing your own research, kind of diving into those stories, being willing to go down the rabbit hole without, somewhat being open to going against your initial thoughts or opinions and things like that. But me said most of Europe has ended all restrictions. Lockbart, thank you so much for the $4 super chat. So, with what me just said, let's take a look at some of these places that are now, because miraculously, just after Gavin Newsome had that slip up, I think it's been about a week or so. Now it's like, oh, we're gonna end these mask mandates. So this is according to New York Times. California will end its indoor mask mandate next week. Australia will reopen its borders to all vaccinated visitors. New Jersey's governor will stop requiring masks in schools. It was some other places here. The governors of Delaware and Oregon also made announcements on Monday about relaxing mask mandates at the end of March. So this just goes on to talk about several different states, and also I think Canada is going to be lifting, at least, I'm not exactly sure everything they're going to be lifting, but I believe they are going to be, and correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, I believe they are going to be lifting the vaccine mandates for the truckers. It was some type of response. They're not directly saying it was due to the truckers, but I think it's interesting that everybody is just, oh, it's just that time of year. Do you think this is a coincidence? Do you think the science is changing? What do you think we're seeing here? Do you think this is a response to enough of these, governors and mayors looking ridiculous? And they're like, well, let me give them a little leeway. I look so bad and I don't want to, lose at midterms or whatever the case may be.
It's a combination of all of the above. Like just being realistic about it. It's a combination of all of that. Like I said before, they are considering moving COVID from being a pandemic to an endemic, which makes it like the flu, which I know was a lot of people's initial things is saying that it's like the flu. But so with all the new information and things that are coming out and the changes in how they're just categorizing the virus as well, I expected this to come at some point, so it makes sense that it's coming. Now, the timing of it is questionable, like you said, with so many governors getting caught without masks and stuff like that. But I believe that it's a combination of everything. And what initially probably started it, we'll never know the real truth, too. We'll never know it. They won't tell us.
You know what I think is going to happen? I think it's going to be very similar to what we seen with 9/11, what we seen with Afghanistan, how they literally will come out 20 years later and they'll be like, oh, yeah, you know that one time that we lied? It just happens from time to time. But whatever, you'll get over it. We only spent trillions of your taxpayer dollars. But I mean, hey, we slipped up. I think it's crazy. I think it's crazy that politicians are constantly able to make mistakes that we would never be allowed to make on a job. Fauci, right? Some of the things that were called conspiracy theories that are now the truth and being recognized as such, right? Some of the things that because I think compared to what you and I are saying, we kind of took opposing views, and at least initially on COVID. Some of the things that I was bullied for, right, received death threats and all kind of stuff, is now like, oh well, whatever. The science changes,
Yeah.
and I couldn't do that on my job. I mean, how long could you get away with?
I'd be fired day one in my job, in my career. So yeah, it's you would think telling the truth should be free, right? Like you should want the people that you are, like, literally the politicians are there to serve us. Like that's what their purpose is. You would think they would want us to have the most information possible. And that's why I'm so like, yeah, me and you did start on opposite positions on this COVID thing. But like, as you see now, we've kind of met in the middle because after a while, I'm just looking at it and I'm like, what? Nah, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense. So
I think so many people are starting to realize that, especially when you're gonna like smear it in people's faces. It's like, yeah, I'm not gonna wear my mask because I'm above you, but I still got your children masked, and I'm gonna sit right beside them and put it in your face and smile big. And you better not say anything to me about it. And if you do, I'm just gonna shift blame. I'm not even gonna address it.
Yep.
It's very offensive. It's very offensive when a Garcetti will say, well, I hold my breath. I held my breath. It's science, right? Like, these people treat us like we are, unintelligent, like we don't matter. And honestly, it's a little infuriating. And I know I don't come off as such, like I was saying a little earlier. At some point, you cannot take these things to heart, but it is upsetting, right? I was even thinking about the Amir Locke case recently, where the young man who had a legal firearm, and I hate even having to even position it like that, especially as it relates to a Black man, because even this idea of, oh, legal firearm, like he went and registered it, so that changes the essence of who he is as a human. No, we literally have, or are supposed to have, the human right to defend ourselves, right? And you have these people who burst into his home, murder this man on his couch, and it's like, oops, wrong address, our bad. Like, what? And then the taxpayers are left with the bill. And it's like, why would you care You know what I mean? Why would you care if it's not your money and we just keep giving more and you have people, oh, the rich needs to pay more taxes. Why? So we can have more foolishness happening as opposed to having these people, first of all, correct some of the things that they're already doing and a wasteful spending they're already doing and correcting issues before giving people more money to exacerbate the issues that we haven't fixed. Like some of this stuff is just ridiculous. And these are supposed to be the professionals. We don't get to, I don't get to do that. You don't get to do that.
Yeah.
And
I 100% agree.
I don't know if you're a gun owner, but if I was to do something irresponsible, these people will hang you out to dry. This lullaby story that y'all get on TV that people can just shoot people and there's no consequences, that is not true. And I've known people personally that in imminent danger have had to use their firearm to protect their lives, and you're still going to catch a case, right?
Yeah.
They're still going to investigate you. There'll still be possible charges pressed, right? And we just don't get this amount of excuses. And then what makes it so much worse is they're doing it on our dime.
Yep.
It's sad.
Yep. It's disgusting. It's like the way you just broke that. It's all disgusting. And, you know, it's gun ownership is a right? That's something that we all have as Americans, is the right to bear arms. And the fact that the people that are supposed to be bearing arms to protect us can make a mistake like that. And like you said, if me and you were to make the same one and shoot somebody incorrectly, we'd be in jail right now, period. It wouldn't be a question. Are they going to press charges? We would be in jail that same day.
And just think about all the money that is being paid out every year due to police misconduct, due to these type of quote unquote mistakes, due to this very sloppy policing. And they don't foot the bill, we do. And it's particularly, right? It's particularly mostly happening in areas where you have a high Black population, okay? And in those areas, you already are struggling for funding. You're already dealing with poverty. You're already struggling with funding for education. And then you think taxpayers want to turn around and pay out, you know, those type of dollars? Yeah. It's just very irresponsible. So across the board, I'm not going to put all the blame on the police. We've talked about this. We talked about how a lot of these police chiefs, right, directly answer to the mayor or maybe put in place by some type of a government official. So I'm not just going to let them, you know, skirt off without any type of responsibility, because we know when election time comes around, they'll get in front of these podiums and they'll just try to pretend like they're so innocent and they're going to do all these things to correct policing. But as it stands, I don't think that we've yet to see Joe Biden or Kamala Harris even mention, okay, the Amir Locke case. But they ran their whole entire campaigns on the backs of Black people. Joe Biden looked us in the eyes and said, if you don't vote for me, you're not Black, okay? If you don't vote for me, you ain't half Black, for my co-host. You know, and then, you know, to run their entire campaigns on this, oh, we're going to stop this platform. Not only do you not stop it, okay, you don't even mention it.
That's the thing that again, for people who like do have the time to do the research, we saw it coming. Like the writing was on the wall. They did exactly what they need to, what we were talking about earlier, to elicit an emotional response to people, to get people so riled up in their feelings that they were going to support them because you hit that nerve for them. And then, and this isn't just on every politician does this to a degree. And this is why I'm not a political party person. Like, you won't get me supporting just one party just blindly, because whoever's got my best interest in heart that I believe, I'm going to try to go that route. But with that being said, it's like, you have people who have what do you think campaign managers are for? They're not there to try to get people the truth. They're there to try to say, hey, if we do this, if you say this, this is going to get you X amount of many votes. Don't worry about it. Once you get voted in, that's on them. That's how American politics and probably politics around the world are built.
It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. What does give me hope, and we're gonna talk about this a little bit, is like I said, with the trucker convoy that's in Ottawa. I don't know if it's still going on. I don't believe it is. But the noise that they've been able to make, the tons of people that they've been able to get on, tons of people from all different backgrounds, across political spectrums, across ideologies. And it's like we're all coming together for this one goal. To my understanding, at least 85% of the truckers were vaccinated, and they're still like, nah, like, we're not doing that. We're not cool with it. Y'all are going too far with these mandates. And I couldn't find the official numbers. And I believe that's because they don't want us to know. But they're estimating that this could have been anywhere from 200,000 to 2.3 million people. And I know that's a stretch of an estimate, but like I said, I couldn't find any definite numbers. People are estimating different things. And of course, I believe, they don't really want us to know the truth, and the powers in those numbers. But to see that many people come together for a common goal, and not only that, but to move the needle, as a Canadian official did come out and say that they will be pulling back on some of those mandates. I mean, it's the only hope that I have left. And I actually believe overwhelmingly, kind of like exactly what happened with you and your family, the hypnosis has slowly worn off on most Americans, and most people are kind of just over it, tired, kind of just ready to move back on to everyday life.
Yeah. Everybody's ready just to get back to whatever the new normal is going to be. We're just ready. Let's pull it back as much as we can, and then let's form a new normal or get back to as close to the normal before. People are just tired of it. This has been an exhausting time period for everyone. A pandemic, an election, lies that just get proven more and more every day. People are just tired of it, and what people need to realize, and as much as they're getting ready for the midterms and things like that, people are really going to vote in a way that I think is going to surprise a lot of people, because everyone's just tired of it. Anyone that you talk to, whether you agree with their political opinion or not, it's one common theme. Most Americans, most people are just tired of the bull crap.
Yeah, absolutely. And then these grocery bills and these gas prices are looking absolutely ridiculous. And I don't think that a lot of people are happy about it. And the unfortunate part to me is that, unfortunately, I could see this coming, and it doesn't make me happy to say that. And I just, I take pride being truthful, even when it hurts, even when people have been rude to me, even sometimes people that I know personally have said hurtful things about me. When you know my character, you know what type of person I am, I hold truth above all. And I was very critical about some of those stimulus packages, not because I didn't think people needed them. Of course, we needed them in the condition of everything that was happening. However, it takes a stronger mind to see what's down the road and to see the pros and the cons. And now I think, if I had to bet, and I'm not really a betting woman, but if I had to bet, I think that a lot of people will find that I don't know this was worth like the $1,200, because this is just the beginning. This is like, don't get it twisted. This is just the beginning of the inflation, and the inflation is even higher than it was going into the Obama era. Um, if I remember that correctly, the last time we had rates of inflation this high, and it wasn't nearly this high. It's even
Yep.
higher now. And so we're going to be dealing with this for a while. I saw somebody posted a TikTok video today where like you have a Walmart that is literally locking up their packages of steaks so people won't like steal them.
That's
The
crazy.
prices are so out of control.
That's wild. That's just what have we gotten ourselves into? That's all I can say with that. Cause it's I don't even know. People have been locked down and restricted for so long. I wonder what the blowback's going to be once the reins are let up. Are people just going to go bat crazy because they're just tired of it? So
I really I really don't know. I do feel bad for people that may not be in the best financial spot and may have been pushed into these areas because of the climate, not necessarily because they wanted to be there. And I was very adamant about young people, please keep working. Like, if you can
yeah,
keep working, building money, like this is a good time to be getting the bag and be getting to the money and saving your money, particularly you know, they're projecting that black wealth is supposed to be zero by 2053, if I remember correctly. And it might be even sooner than that, but you know, so many businesses were closed, and it's a sad situation, man. It's a sad situation. Some people have lost their homes, their jobs, their careers, their savings. You know what I
yep,
mean? Because of something that wasn't their own fault. People were accusing me of being a grandma killer, but I'm like, look, like, you know, when the dust settles, what are you gonna have to pick up? Like, what are
completely
you
have to rebuild completely from the ground up. That's
And what did we, looking back, I bet you, right? I just don't know if we would have done it much differently. I just don't know what we gained. Looking at other countries and even looking at some of the states that never really locked down compared to some of the people that had like the strictest, you know, the strictest mandates and lockdowns. I mean, in some areas, they still ended up doing about the same. So I don't know. It's just really, really unfortunate. And I don't even think that we've dealt with, I don't think we've seen the entire blowback of this. Um,
yeah. The economic repercussions of this are literally going to be felt for a generation, if not more. Period. That's just what it is. And that's the reality of it. And unfortunately, it's one of those things where, like you said, they kind of showed us the carrot, right? With especially like with giving people money and stuff like that. And behind that the whole time it's like, no, y'all whole future is not going to be the same. When me and you are like 65, 70 years old and we wonder why we can't retire, we're going to look back and say, oh, you know what, 2020 to 2022, we're still making up for that in some ways. So
Yeah, they're thinking it's going to be supply chain issues. Even what's going on in Canada, they're estimating that the supply chain could be affected, I think, up to 3 years just by
dang.
the amount of time that those truckers took off.
Yeah.
You know, so it's kind of a big deal. I really just don't. I'm not a economics expert, you know. I have a lot of common sense, but I'm definitely like not a mathematician. But I know when 2 plus 2 equals 4, and I think that you know I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen and how things are going to go, but at some point, what comes up must come down. And like you said, we are going to have to feel the repercussions of that. Now, where we start to get into the conspiracy theories is some people theorize that it may be one way, or the other. They think that at some point the government may try to force, right, certain things on us, certain lifestyles on us, and maybe those things will maybe balance out some of those things, drive less, don't eat as much meat, do this and that. They may be on the more extreme side of what may potentially happen, and then on the less extreme, which is doesn't mean less impactful, but we'll kind of see something like what we saw happening during Obama's time with like that, just the housing crisis and things like that.
For sure.
So last thing, let's jump into this Biden and his crack pipe story, okay? So this has the internet going crazy today. Let's check this out. This is according to blackenterprise.com. Biden administration to fund the distribution of crack pipes and syringes to promote racial equity. On Monday, applications closed for the Biden administration's new $30 million grant program to provide crack pipes and smoking kits to promote racial equity. Now, keep in mind, these were just the same people that were floating that they wanted to, I can't remember if it was like ban or tax tobacco products or something like that. Starting this May, the harm reduction program will provide taxpayer funds to nonprofits and local governments that work to make drug use safer for addicts. Overseen by the Department of Health and Human Services, the grants will be allocated towards smoking kit supplies that will provide pipes for users to smoke crack cocaine, crystal meth, and any illicit substance. The program hopes the kits will reduce the risk of infection when doing drugs with glass pipe. It prioritizes the organizations that target underserved communities, including African Americans and LGBTQ. Now, see, this is something I talk about all the time over here is you always trying to put Black people as a face of something. To comply with the President Biden's executive order on advancing racial equity. And I don't even know what LGBTQ has to do with racial equity, like why they're putting those together. My assumption would be that I think if I remember correctly, Black Americans have some of the highest rates of people in the LGBTQ demographic. So that would be the only reason that would make sense why they're saying it. I don't know. Funding will be used to enhance overdose and other type of prevention activities to help control the spread of infectious disease and the consequences of such diseases for individuals with or at risk of developing substance use disorders. There have been mixed response to the program, with some states opting out of the program, while cities like San Francisco and Seattle have started distributing the kits. Meanwhile, Republicans are blasting the program for using taxpayer dollars to aid in drug abuse.
Okay. So there's a couple of things wrong with this. Well, everything's wrong with this. But this alone should tell everyone why to prove to anyone the war on drugs was not about actually being a war on drugs. It was about a war on Black people. But with that being said, to spend $30 million to provide, like, oh my G, who okayed this? Like, this seems like something that would happen in a Simpsons episode. This does not seem like real life.
So I think that the title and how people are characterizing it, I think is a little
misleading.
Yeah, not necessarily misleading because it is like true, but the way they're saying it is very like clickbaitish, right?
True.
So I think what we're actually seeing is an extension of the programs that They've done in places like San Francisco, if I remember correctly, that they've already done in places like LA, that they've already done in New York, if I'm not mistaken. If I am, let me know in the chats, right? Where they have these sites of supervision where people are doing these drugs and they don't overdose. Now, I've talked about this, and I've literally just talked about this. I think this was last week. I do not agree with taxpayers footing the bill for people's vices. Okay, it's just not something I'm into. As much as I think you have the freedom to do these things in your home, as long as no other criminal activity is being committed, and I shouldn't even have to say that, but I swear people will put words in your mouth, so I want to be very clear, right? I'm not big on like busting into people's homes, and this kind of goes back to the whole no not grade thing. I'm not into busting into people's homes looking for freaking marijuana, heroin, crack cocaine, with whatever it may be. Not only have we seen that be very, very potentially dangerous a lot of times for people that are not even involved, were not even the suspect, right? But even beyond that, like you already mentioned, the drug on war, the war on drugs was a completely failed war. We lost that war. The American government lost the war on drugs. And so for them to turn around and incentivize this, I think you'll have some activists, or you'll have some I think you'll have some activists. I think you'll have some BLM activists. I think you'll have some LGBTQ activists that may believe that they are doing the right thing by supporting these type of initiatives and feeling like they're helping people. Where I don't agree is doing it on the taxpayer funds, doing it through grants. If you want to donate, because these are nonprofits that are going to be awarded this money, right?
Yeah.
If you are a nonprofit and you want to help people, get off drugs, and honestly, helping people do drugs to like make it safer, it's a weird concept to me, man. It's a weird concept, just
Yeah,
in
because
general.
you would think that money would be better spent fully on rehabilitation, right? And centers for that, rather
Yeah,
than providing them a safer
yeah,
way to get high.
yeah.
Like it's something in that. There's a duality in that I'm not quite comfortable
Comfortable
with.
with.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's how I
yeah,
feel about it. That's how I feel
yeah.
about it. Like it's not, it's just very weird. It's odd. It's not something I could sit here and be like, yeah, I support that. Like, no, I think it's kind of weird that a nurse or a doctor is watching you sitting there getting high. You know what I mean? And we are being made to believe that, oh, well, oh, this is the thing you support because it'll help people. And it's like, I don't really support you doing the drugs in the first place, to be perfectly honest. However, you know what I mean? And that's based on my knowledge of drugs, what they do to the brain, what they do to the body. Is not something that I'm going to be like, yay, go. Like, I'm behind you. No, I want you to be rehabbed so you can look very healthy, productive, you know what I mean? Whatever, happy type of life. So I think it's just a weird concept, you know. However, I just think what we've done in the past hasn't worked. Do you think it's like a healthy medium? Like, what role should a government play in drug use?
See, I'm all for the rehabilitation. Like, if this money was going, like I said, towards centers or even counseling, things like that, that research to help people break their habits fast, stuff like that, I'm for. But helping people to get high safer, to me, does not feel like like the role that's not how I would want my tax money spent. It's just not. I guess there's to be fair, I guess there's some way of thinking of that you're helping people possibly get on the path to being able to get clean by providing them a safer way, and then hopefully while they're in there getting their pipes and whatever else, that there's somebody's there talking to them to help them take that path towards rehabilitation. But even with that said, it's just like I said, it's just something icky about this, and I know that's not a good word to use. It's hard to like to make that tangible, but it just feels weird. It just feels weird.
Yeah, I totally, like, I 100% agree with that. I feel like it's the government. I feel like the role of the government should be to offer, like, some level of protection and safety, right? And to protect people's human rights.
That's a
Right.
fact.
So what I mean by that is like protecting the border, making sure that our military, like, we're not being overcome, by other countries and things like this, and then protecting my rights. So my freedom to say what I want, my freedom to protect myself and my property, my freedom to not have my assets seized by your hitmen and stuff like this. And so that's what I think the ultimate role of the government is: not to play your friend, not to play your mom, not to play your dad, not to feel like a sister, not to be someone to lay your head on their shoulder, right? I just don't think that's the role of the government. And why I say that is, one, going back to when we were talking about like the whole Stacy Abrams thing, and some of them just not having the ability to be straightforward and honest. So first of all, it's a trust thing. Second of all, the closer you get to someone or something, the more power they have, right? The more advantage they can take of you. Sometimes they get out of hand, right? You start to get into feeling more of like an authority figure as opposed to a garden of our rights. If that makes sense. And so I think that's maybe some of the feelings we're trying to look for as describing it as icky, because it's just like that's a little too close for comfort.
It's a thin line. But yeah, I agree with you. Like the job of the government isn't to parent, right? It's not to parent, it's to protect. So I feel where you're coming from with that 100%.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. This may I don't know how similar this is, but I know every time kind of like the drug issue comes up with the government, people will mention like Switzerland and Portugal and some places like that where um your drugs are pretty much decriminalized. Now, I don't know. Do you know if they have actual injection sites like that people can just go and do the drugs on their own free time, or how does it? I'm not super familiar.
Not that I know of. At least not where I live. Like, not that I know of.
I remember there were stories coming out of California where people were saying, excuse me, there were stories coming out of California where people were saying there were like needles being found at like playgrounds.
That's crazy.
And stuff like that. It was just getting like really creepy, like finding them on the side of the streets and stuff, and how it hasn't really, you know, I think it gets tricky, right? Because unfortunately, I think in America, more so now than ever, and even more as we go into the future, you're going to see more and more mental health issues arise. I think that has a lot to do with our food. Okay. All of this processed foods, the government and all these people are playing with our foods. You have our education system that does not reward creativity, critical thinking, and all of these other things, and then you have a government that almost incentivizes people to be, well, I don't know if that's the right way to explain it, but it's just not very inspiring. A lot of the things we've seen, COVID, lock yourself in your house, be fearful, right? These
Yeah,
things are not really motivating people to, you know, be happy, build a life that they are enjoying. We look at a lot of people our age are overwhelmingly in college debt. People are starting families a lot later, all of these things. And I think you're going to continue to see a lot of mental health issues. And I have a fear almost that the government knows this. The big pharma knows this. They're helping exacerbate it and they're going to take advantage of it, right?
for sure.
And then now, not only is that going to help expand big pharma, but now it's a gun rights issue because, if you're doing drugs and if you have mental health issues, you can't own a firearm, right?
Yep.
Or at least that's what they're trying to push towards. So it's all these possible agendas at play. And unfortunately, I can't put any of this beyond these people.
You
I just
can't.
can't do it.
Yeah. You be crazy to try to put any of that past them. So no, you that's exactly what they'll do. Like you can't trust them to have any of your best interests. It's all about the dollar, right? Like, and especially when you mention big pharma capitalizes off people having huge anxiety, right? People being depressed because of lockdown and being stuck in the house. All that shit goes right back into big pharma's pockets. Like it's just a cycle. It's a cycle, and once you realize that you're on it, hopefully you can get off of it somewhat. But we can still only escape it, but so much because it's just ingrained in how the society works.
Well, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up for tonight?
Man, like I said, like do the research, like, and I'm sure your audience, because you're so on top of it, knows, like, just research everything, trust nothing. And I hate to be that guy that's like a conspiracy theorist or whatnot, but it's real. That's
One
just
time
the
you
reality
called
we
me
live
a
in.
conspiracy theorist and it hurt my feelings. You remember that?
Oh man, that was years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
was a
remember
while ago. He was like, "You kind of a conspiracy theorist." I was like, "Oh, kind of what?" No,
that.
I'm not. And
But see, I don't.
look at you coming on over to the dark side. You see how that works?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I said, once you get in that rabbit hole, you'll never see the world the same way again, man. And that's just the way it works.
It's so, it's so like, I don't know. It's so messed up, and I never really understood the depth of ignorance is bliss until about
Mm,
the last 2 years or so.
yeah,
Because I've gone through my moments where I'm like, bro, like this can't be happening. Like I know they aren't doing this to people. I know they aren't lying like this. I know this isn't happening. And yeah, it's happening. And you deal with these moments that are like, can other people see that it's happening? Like, what's going on? And,
yeah.
like I said on one of my last shows, I don't think that we are the anomaly. I just think that you have these fringe voices that get to be the loudest, that get to be the most promoted. And that's why when we see these things, we need to be adamant about being truthful, sharing it with our family and friends, even though they may cuss us out or try to get rid of us. Baby, you're not getting rid of me, first of all, okay? And a lot of times, believe it or not, these people, they'll come back 6 months. Sometimes it may even be
Mhm.
5 years. And they'll be like, you remember that time? You were right. And sometimes they're not going to say you were right, but you can kind of, catch them kind of easing up to you and things like that. So, but hey, it is what it is. It's a part of life. Life goes on, and we can just only hope for the best. And I think these things are gonna turn around and end up being, good stories. So we'll
Sure,
see.
sure. You
We'll
gotta plant that seed in people and let it grow the way it's gonna grow. So
Exactly. Hey, you want to tell everybody where to find you?
yeah, you guys can follow me at CEO Hayes. That's CEOHAIZE on every social media platform that I'm on. If you want to follow my podcast, it's at Awaken Soul Pod. And then if you want to follow the podcast itself, it's the Awaken Soul Podcast on every podcasting platform and YouTube.
All right, y'all. So thank you to everyone who super chatted. Thank you to my patrons. Thank you to everyone who supports the content. Y'all make sure if you are into like the podcast on Spotify and Apple, you like on everything, right?
Everything.
Yeah, so check out his podcast, like really good stuff. He does like a plethora of all different type of topics and music and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So make sure y'all check him out. Make sure y'all share this video, gives it a thumbs up, and make sure y'all hit the notification button. Make sure you still subscribe to my notifications because sometimes the notifications don't go out for whatever reason.
It's funny how that works, right?
Yeah, like YouTube, it's all good. They be hating on me. I worked, you know, I don't want to say I worked hard. It'd be hard for creatives to say we worked hard because we always feel like we could work harder. You know what I mean? But we work hard building these platforms and they be like, nah, I'm a censor you. Like, whatever, just deal with it. So, but hey, we keep it moving, you know, for the people that rock with us and we just do it like that. But all right, y'all, we're out. Have a good night. Bye.